one of those folks that believe in punctuality. I believe if you start on time, you can leave on time. And our goal is to leave on time today. So I'm going to welcome you all. I am Persephone Gary. I am a resident of Newport Hills. I've lived here with my family since January of 2020. Before we start this meeting, I am going to take a pause out of respect for my community as a member of the Black community, to just take a moment to pause in light of recent racist attacks that have happened and transpired in the last week. So if you find it appropriate, you can pause with me now. Alrighty, thank you all so much. Thank you so much for being here. It's a delight to get to see some of our neighbors. We're coming out of just some turbulent times with COVID, and so it's good to see bright and shining faces. It's good to see us communing together. I have respect for those who wear masks, those who choose not to. So thank you so much just for being here. To our online community who's joining us and watching and streaming, thank you too for being here. So welcome to, I'm going to read some of these things again in the event of time to make sure that we get in and out on time. So welcome to the Spring 2022 General Membership Meeting of the Newport Hills Community Club. We're so glad to have you here and to join us. The past 2.5 years have been challenging, just as we talked about. Tonight, we are fortunate to have Bellevue City Council members that will be present or that are present. If you're present now, feel free to stand. And the council members that have been invited are Conrad Lee, John Stokes, Janice Zahn, and they are going to provide us with an update in a few minutes around the city and things that are happening. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your servant leadership. Would also like to welcome Tara Johnson from the Community Development Department, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the city's comprehensive plan update. She also has a colleague that will be joining her. Thank you so much. You can stand and wave your hands and you will know who you're expecting to talk to. Alrighty, and then she's going to provide also an update on the framework for how the city will handle growth over the next few years. But before we hear from them, we are going to hear from the president of the Newport Hills Community Club, Mr. Kazuki Sawanoi, who will give us the report on the state of the club. And then after that, we will have the other speakers, and then please hold for some Q&A at the end. Kazuki.
Thank you, Persephone. Hi, everyone. My name is Kazuki Sawanoi. I'm so glad to see you today. I'm the current president of the Newport Hills Community Club. I was born and raised in Japan and come to the United States to study in 1994. I have lived in Newport Hills since year 2000. I have raised, right now, Newport Hills is my home. I have raised my son in this community. He's a high school junior now. This is a great place to live because we have safe environment, walkable streets, great schools, a nice shopping center, and access to parks and sports facilities. I started volunteering for the community club because I wanted to give back to the community that welcomed me and my family. Next slide, please. The pandemic gave us real challenge for the last 2 years. We had to cancel our in-person events, but we managed to organize some events to cheer up the community. We organized Celebrate Newport Hills Parade, a car parade, to celebrate the class of 2020 who could not have in-person ceremony. We hosted a virtual talent show in the fall of 2020 as well, in which local musicians, dancers, and an artist showcased their performance. Last fall, we organized an online candidate forum, which participants included our Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Newenhouse, and Council Member Lee. We started monthly community coffee talk on Zoom so that neighbors could socialize safely. Next slide. Last month we were finally able to organize a spring egg hunt in Jinmei Elementary School. It was first in-person event in 2 years. Fortunately, the weather was great, and more than 200 kids enjoyed hunting 2,200 eggs that was staffed by mostly by high school volunteers. And next slide, please. It's kind of small, but let's see. I will go over. I'd like to report on our budget. This is our financial report from the last fiscal year, which ended this March. We had almost 250 households who paid $10 membership. We had almost the equal amount of generous donations. We didn't spend a lot because our activities were limited due to the pandemic. The largest amount spent was storage rental fee, which was about $800 per year. We currently store 10 boxes that contain equipment for egg hunt and picnic. We also have several boxes of documents which we are planning to digitize to save space. We are looking for options to reduce the cost. So if you have any suggestions for no cost or low cost solution options, please let us know. Next slide, please. So this is the budget for this fiscal year, and this is on the handout as well, so that you can see. We put a goal of 300 membership. We kicked off our membership drive in April by distributing door hangers to the area's 2,600 homes. We had, again, the fabulous volunteers who were high school students to distribute the door hangers. So far, 160 households have paid the due. We appreciate all of your financial support. If you know, we obviously, 300 out of 2,600 is not a lot, so we want to aim higher. So if you know anyone, someone in your neighborhood who might be interested in the community club, please spread the word and invite them to join. We newly created our membership card, which is here. So, and if you become members, please take it home. Heidi has one there. It's at the table.
Yeah, the folks that paid tonight, I filled out your form, so.
Yes, this is brand new. Okay. And next slide, please. I'd like to introduce our board members. The board consists of officers and area trustees. Board members, please raise your hand. Okay, this Stephanie, Nami, area trustee, Karen, area trustee, Heidi, past president, and Pinchin, our newest board member who joined 2 weeks ago. Yeah. He's a new secretary. Yeah. Yeah, please. Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah. So one of the priorities for this year is to fill the opening positions for these officers and area trustees. Currently, vice president and treasurer positions are open. Area trustee is a representative of an area of roughly 60 to 100 households. As you can see in the handout, we divided the neighborhood into 24 areas. Each area can be subdivided into neighborhood blocks, where each block has a block captain. If you like to become an area trustee or a block captain of your neighborhood, please let us know. Okay, next slide, please. Sorry, can you go back to one? Yes, priorities. There are other priorities for this year. We'd like to participate in the opening of the new park that way. in our neighborhood named Newport Hills Woodlawn Park that is scheduled to open in summer. We'd like to support our local businesses. We are fortunate to have great restaurants, grocery store, doctor's offices, and many other businesses in our neighborhood. We also heard voices from our community that we want to preserve our neighborhood character. What makes Newport Hills unique and attractive is tree canopies and harmonious housing design, many of which were built in 1960s. We'd like to preserve trees and neighborhood character as much as possible. There are flyers on the table in the back. It's from an organization called Trees for Livability, who are organizing an online petition to strengthen the Bellevue's tree code. I hope you take a look. Next slide, please. Okay, these are the events and activities planned for the rest of the year. We hope you join us at any event, and also we are looking for volunteers to support these events. Right. And the last one, my Newport Hills story is on our website, and we are trying to collect the stories from our neighborhood, new and old, and we like to document the history of the neighborhood. We already put 3 or 4 stories there, so please go to our website and take a look. Okay, and you can contact us at email. It's also on the back side of the membership card. Today, we are very fortunate to have council member Janice Zhang to speak to us, and also city staff, Ms. Brooke Broad and Ms. Tara Johnson for the presentation of the community comprehensive plan. And so it is a great opportunity for the community to learn about the comprehensive plan and also to give feedback, our feedback. And thank you all for attending this evening, and especially thank you for Pastor Bob and Newport Hills Community Church for letting us use this space. It's really nice for them to let us use for free. It is really important function in the community, so I really appreciate it. And thank you very much for supporting the community.
Thank you, Kazuki. I want to also, as we talk about Newport Hills stories, I want to stop also and just acknowledge the celebration of Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. So that is this month as well. But as we talk about Newport Hills stories, I would like to get a little bit of information about some of you all and kind of like let you all shake off some of the tired looks on your face. So if you have lived in Newport Hills for less than 2 years, please stand. I'm standing. All right. If you have lived in Newport Hills for more than 20 years, please stand. Wow. That tells you something. All right, just because I want everybody to get a chance to stand. If you own pets in Newport Hills, please stand. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. It also helps those folks that are walking in late. They don't get noticed because everybody was standing and sitting. So now for the update on the city. So let's talk a little bit about our council members that are hopefully in attendance right now. We have, or if not, we just like to acknowledge them. Conrad Lee, who has served as a council member since January of 1994, also having served as deputy mayor 2010 and 2011 and mayor in 2012 and 2013. He is our city's longest continuously serving council member and the first mayor of Asian ancestry. We also have John Stokes, a council member since 2012 and served as mayor 2016 and 2017. And prior, oh, go ahead, Tyler.
We just have Janice.
Oh, we'll acknowledge their service, but not their presence. How about that, y'all? Alrighty. So we're going to skip to the folks that are here. We're so appreciative of your time and talents, Ms. Zahn. And so Janice Zahn has served as a council member since November of 2017. Prior to that, she served as the city's transportation commission on the city's transportation commission. Each of our members, all of our public servants provide a rich professional and personal history and background. And so with that, if you want to read more about them, of course, you can go to our city website and check out their bio. But with that, I would like to turn the microphone and the program over to Councilman Zahn. Thank you so much for being here.
So thank you for having me. The mayor sent her regards. I think she had wanted to come and was not able to. I see a number of faces. I'm just so excited to be here because this is my neighborhood too. So for those that don't know, I've been in Bellevue for 28 years. If you go down 119, you go under the freeway, you see that little neighborhood with only one way in and one way out called Greenwich Crest, and that's where I live. My house is still on septic, so I feel like I'm just been a long-term member of this community. When my kids, who are now 21 and 23, were little, there was a dance studio in the corner, and we ate up here, we shopped up here. One of our favorite places is Terry's Kitchen. We love the mix-ups and the chicken wings. So anyway, just a little bit about me. So just excited to be here. It sounds like, is this the first meeting back in person? So it's so exciting to be back. And I would say same for the city. So our city hall is open again, and our community centers are open. We have lots of activities that are available for young and young at heart. So everything is reopening, although we recognize that in these times, it's being safe is different for different people depending on where we are. So just excited to be here. Couple things. We're going to be talking tonight about the comp plan, which this is a 20-year plan. So it's a very important document of engaging with the community so that as we look forward 20 years from now, how do we plan for the growth in our city? So I'm sure that you'll hear from them that from a regional standpoint, Bellevue is planning on 35,000 more people and 70,000 more jobs between now and the year 2044. So that's a lot of jobs and people. And so part of our intentionality community on the comp plan to figure out how do we best make sure that that growth is done intentionally, it's done well, and that it has the community's input as part of that. So they'll be talking a lot more about that, and I don't want to steal their thunder. Then I also wanted to talk a little bit about how many were able to come to the neighborhood conference on Saturday. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm getting some weird echo here. Was it worth it? Did you have fun?
I did. I had a great time.
Yeah, so we're hoping that, and did you find it useful as well? Yeah, so this is part of what we want to make sure that we're engaging in the community, and so it's about how we share the different parts and pieces of the city. We did some walking tours, and we'll have more of those. My sense is that from a community center or community club standpoint, just like with Tara and Brooke, if there's something you're interested in, we can have staff come and share with you about whatever topics you want to learn more about and talk about. Let's see, other things going on. So we have our parks and open space planning that's been going on for a while. We've got a lot of input as part of that. So what I wanted to let you know is that the city council is considering, sorry, is it okay? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm making sure I'm not irritating anyone. Okay, is this better? All right, anyway, on the parks and open space planning, so we have a number of projects that are part of that Parks and Open Space Plan. That is also one that we're actually currently considering whether we put out a parks levy this year. So our 20-year levy doesn't expire until 2028, but we recognize that some of the information that's in there may not be the most up to date. And it's important for us as we think about what we need for a growing city, what are the kind of parks and open space needs? So we heard from the community that we need to be thinking about more neighborhood parks in South Bellevue in particular. So we noticed that there are areas where we don't have a lot of parks. We also heard from this community that although we are, as part of the Newport Hills Woodlawn Park, that part of it is going to be a dog park, that we need to have more dog parks so that we don't have just such a small amount. Because I don't know about anyone else, but when I was walking around during COVID, there's a lot of dogs in our community. And I think they want to make sure that there's places for our dogs to go as well. We also heard that there's interest in making sure that we have more community center spaces and more recreational sports, pickleball, ping pong. We're also starting to talk about cricket as a sport that we are working with. There's a group that's interested in bringing Major League Cricket to this area and are actively working on a parcel that's currently owned by the city up in Miramar Park as a potential for a cricket field. And so I think there's an interest as we become more multicultural in more of those different types of activities that are available in our community. So I wanted to mention that. The Neighborhood Enhancement Program, how many of you were able to submit an idea? So I heard that, thank you, I heard there were 116 submissions. There's $282,000 available. And there's an open house at Newport Hills Elementary on June 15th to hear about the ones that were submitted. I believe that what will happen is there will be different boards around the room so that you can learn about those different projects. And you'll vote on your favorite ones, and then those that get the most votes will be ones that we will implement. So how many people heard about this project and has already heard from staff talking about it? Okay, so about half the room. So I would just say that this is a really important program to make sure that, we work on a lot of large projects, but to make sure that this community gets a chance to have some of the smaller projects that you might be interested in also to be implemented. So thank you for submitting, and please vote when your ballot comes in so that your voice is heard for that. The other one I wanted to bring up is, because I saw that up on your agenda, is tree canopy. So one of the other things that we've done as a city council is looked at a work plan for what we're going to be working on. And reviewing our tree code is on the plan for Q3. So staff is currently working on pulling some pre-work together, and we should be launching the tree code review over the summer months. And then looking at what are the changes we want to make, because we recognize that for us to be a city in a park, we need to make sure that we are looking and updating these codes that have not been touched for many, many years. So we look forward to your engagement on that. Last night, we also heard from staff about doing a retail study. So we have our beloved Newport Hills Shopping Center up here. And one of the things that's going to be part of that retail study is to look at, for Bellevue, and also looking ahead in a growing Bellevue, what are the kind of retail that our city has, where are the gaps, where are the areas we might want to look at having more opportunities. And local mom and pops are definitely one of the areas that we recognize is, really the lifeblood of our community. And so how do we make sure that as we move forward with any kind of retail and needs, that we're cognizant of making sure that those places that we love to shop and eat are still going to be here. So we are putting out that request for proposal in the next couple of months, and then the study should be complete sometime the end of the year. So look for that, something of interest to you. Let's see, what else do I want to bring up? The other one I do want to talk a little bit about is, as part of our affordable housing strategy, one of the strategies is called C1, and that is looking at the faith-owned properties to see if there's an opportunity to look at creating a little more density for that. I wanted to let you know that the map that we saw a little over a week ago does not show any of the faith properties up in Newport Hills as being part of that, because some of the criteria is it's on an arterial, it has to be such a distance from multifamily, and so I did look at that, because this is part of my neighborhood as well, and I did not see any of the faith properties up here. There's not very many, but in case you were curious about that, there are two. Yeah, it was in the not eligible category, so just wanted to let you know that in case you were curious. And then there is a body of work we're going to be doing called the Next Right Work. So staff is going to be coming back and looking at, as we look across the city at what we can do to find ways to make sure that there's different housing choices in our community, so that, I don't know about anyone else, but I don't know that I can purchase my house today. I've been in it for 28 years. So the ability to think about how seniors that want to age in place or to be able to downsize from your home but still live in your community, I would love to think that my 21 and 23-year-old, if they ever want to live here and not in my house, that they actually had a place they could move to. So I think it's an important work that we're going to be doing, and I just want to make sure that you're aware of this work that we're going to be embarking on, so that you can get engaged. And so lastly, I just want to mention that we have a website called engagingbellevue.com, where a lot of the opportunities and the work that we're doing, that would be the place that you would want to go to see about what's happening in the city and where you might want to tie in. So I'm going to stop there, and certainly happy to take questions, because there's lots going on. I'm not always sure what you're interested in your particular neighborhood or community. So questions? Do we have time?
We're gonna do questions and answers at the end. So that-
Okay, I will stay.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that.
So we have council members at stake, so thank you so much. All right, next, I will introduce Tara Johnson and Brooke Broad, who will do that double click on the comprehensive planning that is being done. Thank you so much, council members, for sharing.
Well, maybe we'll introduce ourselves first. It's always interesting to hear yourself over a mic. So my name is Brooke Broad. I'm the Community Engagement Lead for the Planning Division. So that means I help support getting all of yours opinions and thoughts and ideas and feedback on the work specifically done by the Planning Division. And our division is focused mostly on kind of these long-range planning projects. So, and I've worked with the city for about 3 years now.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us, and exciting that this is your first meeting back and we get to be part of it. So thank you for including us. I'm Tara Johnson. I'm the Comprehensive Planning Manager within the Community Development Department, the city's planning division. We also have our economic development folks with council members on, talked about the retail study, which you can learn more about on the city website. And our group, our team works on long-range planning. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, the city's comprehensive plan, which is of course the foundation to all our long-range planning efforts and also includes the vision of the city. So it's a very exciting undertaking. We only go about this process every 8 to 10 years. So last time we went through this process was in the 2012 to 2015 timeframe. So great that all of you are here and will be able to hopefully participate and give us your feedback throughout this 2-year process. So,
I think we can move forward one.
and I apologize for those that are not looking directly at, it is projected over there. All right, so I don't have to look behind me. So a little bit on what the comprehensive plan is, and thank you, council members, on you gave a really nice kind of introduction into what it entails. So a little bit of background and context about where the requirements for a comprehensive plan come from. It of course comes from state law and the Growth Management Act, which essentially sets certain requirements for how cities need to plan for growth within the area. And so most cities in the four-county area, so King County, Kitsap County, Pierce, and Snohomish all plan under the Growth Management Act. The state law requires that cities plan within a certain time period, so we have to look out for the next 20 years. So right now, what the effort we're starting and undertaking is a 20-year effort. Goes from 2024, which is the deadline for when cities have to get this plan adopted by, to 2044. So we're really looking at 20-year planning for growth, what that looks like, where that goes, and potential updates to vision for the city as well as certain other components that we'll be talking about. The comprehensive plan has certain aspects within it. It of course includes the vision for the city, which is the guiding document, and we're going to be starting conversations, or we've started conversations about that, and we'll be doing an update with City Council fairly soon on that too. It also includes chapters or elements, as we call it, that are part of the comp plan. And each of those elements focus on different topic areas. There's one that focuses on transportation. It includes goals and policies for each of those topic areas. So there'll be something on land use, housing, capital facilities, as I said, transportation, utilities, so various pieces like that. And it also sets the kind of the foundation for how City Council sets priorities for how to invest or make improvements to various things like roads and infrastructure within the city or capital investments. So that comes under a separate plan, with a comprehensive plan sets the foundation for how that's gonna occur over the next few years. Could go to the next slide. Thank you. So we talked a little bit about this, and just going to go into a little bit more detail. So how is a comprehensive plan used? So not only is it the city's vision for how it's going to grow over the next 20 years, but it does lead to some specific concrete things that end up getting built in the city. So it leads to, of course, informs, has sets goals and policies that guide development, so land use codes, zoning regulations, various plans and programs. And then it also leads to and determines what gets built within the city and where that occurs. Things like utilities, so ensures safe drinking water and access to that, as well as safety issues and pedestrian access issues within the community. I could go to the next slide. So what's in our current plan? We talked a little bit about that. It of course starts off with a vision for the city, which is the city's footprint for how it's going to grow, and really the community's insight into what they want to see and how their city wants to function over the next few years. It also includes goals and policies for each of the various chapters or elements which we've listed here. So land, as I said, each of the elements or chapters has specific topic areas, things like economic development, the environment, parks and open space, capital facilities, of course, housing and transportation and land use, among others. So that's all contained in volume 1 of our comprehensive plan. Then included in the comp plan, we have volume 2, which includes goals and policies for different areas of the city or sub-areas. So we have various neighborhood plans, including one for Newport Hills, and we went through the process of updating 2 of the neighborhood area plans last year, and a little bit the preceding year too. And we'll be, once we are completed with the comprehensive plan update, then we'll go back to updating those various neighborhood plans in cycles in the future. So Newport Hills will be one of those plans that we look at in the future. The comprehensive plan also includes an overall land use map for the city, which defines what types of uses are allowed in different parts of the city, and that's something that's going to be we look at as part of the update too. If you could go to the next slide. So a little bit on what we're going to be doing as part of this update. I think Council Member Zahn talked about the number of housing units and jobs we're going to be planning for. Bellevue has a pretty significant role regionally. We're the job center for the east side. So there's two big job centers, Seattle, of course, and then Bellevue on the east side. So we function as a job center and also play a fairly significant regional role in supporting other east side cities. So given that, you've heard, I'm sure, a lot of news about all the job growth we're seeing with Amazon moving some of its jobs. After that announcement, we've certainly seen a lot of the other tech companies also expanding their presence. Companies like Meta have really expanded their footprint, and Bellevue's certainly going through a tech boom at the moment. So with that, we anticipate that we're going to be seeing about 70,000 additional jobs. Part of regional planning, overall regional planning, is an emphasis on ensuring that there's enough in housing down. So we want to make sure that there's housing to go along with all the job growth, so we don't see these extended commute times by everyone. Really relates to some of our environmental goals too. And so to compensate, to plan for that job growth, we are anticipating that we'll be planning for at least 35,000 more housing units in the city. And so that's going to be a big part of our process is where do those jobs go and where does that housing go? And then affordable housing, of course, is a key component. I'm sure you've seen lots of articles about how expensive the median or average cost of housing is in Bellevue. So affordable housing is a significant issue and something we are going to need to be planning for as part of the update. Whether that's increasing the types and choice of housing or how we incentivize creation of more affordable housing for median incomes and things like that. And then planning for housing, of course, for transit. There's a fair amount of emphasis on equity. That's a cornerstone of this update. So how we put an equity lens on all policies, as well as our approach to community engagement, and then planning for climate change and climate resilience. We could go to the next slide. And I think I'm going to pass things over to Brooke.
Yeah, so as I guess your community engagement lead, I'll talk you through sort of our timeline for community engagement. So we kicked off this process at the end of February of this year, and we're currently kind of winding down our first phase of engagement in which we're really just kind of getting some high-level feedback, understanding how people feel about the existing city vision, how well we're doing, where we maybe need to put a little bit more emphasis. We're hearing from people about what they really want to see continue on into the future, what we want to build on here in Bellevue, and also talking about what people have concerns about, what are challenges that we really need to address to ensure that Bellevue can maintain its high quality of life. We're gonna be processing all of that feedback. We've heard from over about 2,500 people thus far in a variety of ways. And then that feedback that we get will help inform the next phase of discussion where we really start having some more deeper dive conversations around key livability topics. So this is when we can start talking about what are the different options for housing that we want to look at. What are the kind of transportation modes that we need to be thinking about? How do we think about growing in a sustainable way? We also hear a lot about both the appreciation for how diverse Bellevue is and a desire for all of our diverse parts of our community to come together and to build community like we're doing here tonight. So we'll have opportunities to talk about all of that over the summer and the early fall. All of that will eventually go into developing some number of options for the way in which the city might grow in the future. And we'll come back to the community to share those options, and we'll want to have some really in-depth dialogue about what people see as the pros and cons of the different options and kind of arriving at kind of what our overall direction will be. All of that will finally lead up to actually writing the policy language, all of that really, exciting beach read of the policy language. And again, we'll be taking that out to you to see if we're getting it right, to understand kind of what the consequences. Once that draft is complete, that's when it goes through its regular legislative process in which our planning commission will review and recommend it over to the city council, which will again review and adopt the plan. So all of that will take about 2 years, which which seems like a long time and not enough time at all. And luckily, we're right here at the beginning, so there's still plenty of time for everybody to have lots of opportunities to kind of weigh in and shape the outcome of this plan. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit, and we'll try to move through this quickly so we don't eat into question time, about some of the overall kind of factors and goals that are going to be driving this plan. So I can turn it back over to you, Tara.
So we talked a little bit about how Bellevue, all the job growth that Bellevue's seeing, but the entire region is really experiencing a significant amount of growth. So based on, recent demographic data that we've received, we anticipate that the entire region is gonna grow by 1.8 million between now and 2050. So that's a significant amount of growth. And so planning for that growth in a sustainable and comprehensive way is going to be really important so that we ensure that growth goes where there's access to transportation and infrastructure and services. So we're not seeing a significant amount of sprawl in the area. That's something that Washington State takes very seriously. If you go to the next slide. So a little bit on, we talked about job growth and housing and planning for housing. As I said, a big component of this update, equity being the cornerstone, and all housing issues that we're seeing, not just in Bellevue, but in the entire area, in the entire region, we're experiencing a housing crisis. So a big component of this update is going to be looking at our housing element, our housing chapter within the comprehensive plan, and ensuring that we have policies that will lead to increasing housing choice, housing diversity, and then of course really leading to the creation of new affordable housing opportunities too. If you could go to the next slide. So a little bit on specific data relating to housing. As you can see from this chart, housing prices have gone up significantly since 2012. So the average home price in 2012 was around the 500,000 mark, and now we're close to 1.8 million. So you can see a significant amount of growth, and there's a very small portion of the population that can afford to buy homes in this price range, and so that's why we're really looking at increasing the supply of affordable housing or access to different housing choices really within the city. If you could go to the next slide.
This one has a bit of animation, so we can kind of go through a bit of this.
Yeah. So this graphic actually shows kind of our different scales of housing. So we have on one end we have high-rise downtown development, and then the other end we have our single-family development. A component that's really missing within Bellevue.
Go to the next,
Yeah.
This is more.
Yes. So as you can see from this graphic, so we have two ends of the spectrum. One area that's missing, if you want to advance one more. Yes, one more. Sorry. Yeah. That middle component, what's termed at, you may have heard terms like missing middle, but essentially it relates to things like, garden style apartments, which are like 2 to 3 story apartments or townhomes or duplexes, cottages. Those are the types of housing choices that we're missing within the city. And so that's going to be a component that we look at. Where in the city should that be going? Should that be going in certain neighborhoods, certain arterials? How many more units can we get through adding that choice into the mix? If you could go to the next slide.
Yes. So sustainability is also a big component of this update. Our city council in the fall of 2020 adopted, really for the first time, officially adopted an environmental stewardship plan. So we'll be thinking about those goals as we move forward in the plan, and also we have direction from a variety of other sort of places to also really put a lens on sustainability. So we have goals around reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, increasing tree canopy, and increasing access to parks and trails. So if we move to the next slide, we'll see overall one of our big goals in the city is to reduce our overall greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2050. And there's a lot that we can do through this planning process to address that, because about almost half of our emissions come from transportation sources, so driving fossil fuel vehicles, heavy duty trucks. The other part comes from heating and cooling our buildings. So we have a lot of policies around transportation. We also have a lot of policies around building and land use. So this is a good opportunity to look at those policies and see how we can help achieve this goal. So we are making progress. So even though we've grown 26%, we have still been able to reduce some of our greenhouse gas emissions. But to really make that goal, we're going to have to think about sort of what policies we need to tweak. And so we move forward.
So a little bit on our transportation piece. So we've been actually doing some work over the last year on amending some of our transportation policies both in our comprehensive plan and just our approach to how we look at transportation overall. So we've amended several policies to where we're looking at transportation from a different lens. So we're going from just focusing on what we call single occupancy vehicles or cars to more of a transit focus and what we call multimodal. So it includes things like pedestrian access, transit access, as well as commuting via cars or your personal vehicles. So looking at it from many fronts. If you could go to the next slide. So a little bit on some transportation data. What we found recently is that within Bellevue, 10% of households do not have a car, and we anticipate that number may go up as we plan for. We have 6 new light rail stations that are currently under construction within the city, so that provides really good transit access and probably a reason why we're seeing the job growth that we're seeing too. It makes that makes it really attractive for corporations and companies to locate in Bellevue. We also have done a lot of work around planning for bike access, and so our bike lane and bicycle planning has increased as well. And as I said, planning around our 6 light rail stations, and so that's going to be a focus of the update as well.
Yeah, I think we're getting to the end. So Tara mentioned equity as being an important lens in which we want to make our planning decisions. And so some of the ways that we think about that is, one, we can think about how history has impacted our city and the region, and what we might want to do to address any past harms through our policy updates. We also, one of our chapters or elements is community engagement. And so the city has very specific policies about ensuring that we are talking to all of our diverse communities, that we're looking at new technologies, new ways to communicate with people. And the Growth Management Act, like one of the actual things in state law says you have to engage the public. So that's another important part of doing this work. So we want to engage the public, but we also want to do that in a way that is really broadly representative of how diverse Bellevue is. So if we go to the next slide, I think it's no surprise, we have really changed a lot in our diversity, right? Even in the last 30 years, we've gone from being a very largely majority white city to being sort of 50% of our population is non-white. So that comes from all over. And we also, although I don't have this slide in here, we've also become a much more global city. So a significant part of our residents here were born outside of the US, and we frequently hear how much people really appreciate that about Bellevue and that kind of opportunity to learn and to grow and to kind of get to know other cultures and people. So if we move to the next slide, also equity is also thinking about some of the disparities, and this plays into some of our affordable housing work, right? We are seeing a growing gap between our top 20% earners and our lowest 20% earners. And so those kinds of disparities also play into the crises that we're seeing around housing and other human service needs. So if we go forward, outreach. So we will be doing outreach continuously throughout the next 2 years. So as Councilmember Zahn mentioned, we have our online engagement site. So that's engagingbellevue.com. And this is kind of the place to have your sort of on-demand, at your convenience opportunity to have your say, to ask questions. So there's always a lot of different tools. It's not just the comprehensive plan, but there are projects up there related to parks right now. There's some school road safety projects up there right now. So it's kind of continually changing, and these are always the opportunity where we want to hear from the public. We're also obviously doing lots of in-person, and we're going to continue to do virtual events as well, because we know that works well for a lot of people. So we've done community workshops, presentations like this to a variety of community groups and neighborhood groups, and we've been out. I've been really enjoying this now that some of these restrictions have listed tabling out in the community. So we've been at a variety of different locations and with different partner organizations. We're also using old-fashioned direct mail. So all of you several months ago probably got a questionnaire in the mail. So hopefully you have returned that. We're furiously kind of verifying everybody's handwriting and processing that feedback, and we're looking forward to coming back in the next couple of months to tell you, hey, this is what we heard from you. That survey is also online, so if you didn't get a chance or it got accidentally recycled or whatever, you can still go to engagingbellevue.com and feel free to fill out our short questionnaire. We'll plan other mailers to make sure people stay in the loop. And one of the things that we're doing that's been really exciting to support that kind of equitable public engagement is we have 3 cultural outreach assistants who are working with different communities, and they've been doing presentations in different languages, connecting with some of our different groups, and that's been sort of, I think, a real exciting thing to sort of continue to build on interesting relationships. So I think that brings an end to our presentation, so we can invite council members on back up, and I think open things up to questions.
So I'm just going to turn it back over to you. So thank you very much, both Tara and Brooke, for being here, and council members on. So yes, we are open for questions, and we'd like to start with those in the room. We had some submitted online that we can also go with. So yes, gentlemen in the back, you need a mic, or would you be able to project? Awesome.
I know last year you're talking 35,000 new housing units over the next 20 years. You know, land is a valuable asset. I don't think there's a whole lot of vacant land in Bellevue, maybe I'm wrong. But assuming you're able to pull that off, or developers to pull that off, how are you going to be able to keep, you know, the $35,000 units being up to $2 million a piece when they put them up? And I mean, you can't control the real estate market. I don't think. Maybe the Bellevue City Council can do that. But you know, I've been in the neighborhood since 1981. My house, I'm happier than a pig in what, because it's 10 times what I paid for. But I can't envision anybody moving here in this area unless, well, you have to meet minimum $127,000 here. And I saw a couple of months ago that if you're a family of 4, and living in the city of Bellevue, you're low income and you're making less than $92,000 a year. In economics, I mean.
So maybe I can, so to restate your question, you're asking about we are able to create affordable housing when the market is building much more expensive homes. I think I'm paraphrasing.
And scarcity of land.
And the scarcity of land. So some things that we're doing, we actually just finished adopting the East Main land use changes. That is a parcel or a land area that's right next to the East Main new light rail station. So part of that work is that we are creating incentives so that developers that give us, that they can get a few more amenities for things that we get. And any residential that's built there, there's a requirement for affordable housing also to be there in order for them to get access to any of the amenities and for that. The other thing you may not be aware of is that the state legislature passed a bill called 1590, where we collect 0.1% of additional sales tax. And that money, gets about $8 million a year is collected in the city. And 60% of that can be used for affordable housing projects, and then 40%, up to 40% can be used for services to help people that are in the used to build that area median income, 60% income. So those are two things that we're doing. Earlier, I had mentioned about the faith-owned properties and whether there are some that are on an arterial and have an interest in being able to support building some housing along with their faith properties. So in a lot of ways, how do we make sure that not only is housing being built, but that some of the housing is also affordable? And I would say that if you have any other ideas that we may not have thought of, you know, we're also going to be focused on that next right work, affordable housing. We'd love to get that feedback. Because you're absolutely right. If we continue with this trajectory, one of the largest concerns is that our small mom and pops and our businesses rely on workers. So if we are an unaffordable city, at some point we are going to, I think we already are, losing out on being able to hire amazing, right, teachers, firefighters, you know, folks that are part of our community. So there's a lot of work ahead. I would say that we don't have all the answers. We are actively working on it. Anything else we want to add?
The only, thank you, that was a very comprehensive answer. The only additional piece, and I mentioned that as part of our presentation too, through the process as we look at our overall land use map, we are going to be looking for opportunities to increase different types of housing choice. So part of that process, increasing your housing choice and diversity is really going to help with the affordability issue as well.
So I'll hand it over.
Yeah, so I just want to piggyback off that. So, you know, the affordable housing really tough, right? I mean, so you're gonna have problems with the bottom 20% of the workers that you need here. Not only the bottom 20%, but also the ones that are, you know, you're gonna be your teachers, your, you know, the firefighters, the policemen, they're gonna be traveling far distance service that we all enjoy here in W, right? You know that, and even best case scenario, I think what I came up here, I'm actually more depressed now coming in and finding out this information than I was, because I knew that Chief Millett left because his reasoning was, he said his kids cannot afford to buy here. Right? You have to go to Ohio or something like that. And that guy made $200,000, and he made the decision, I'm not gonna be able to stay here because my won't be able to stay with me here. Even best case scenario with what you guys are saying, I think down the road it's even gonna be even.
Thank you for sharing.
So can I just add one more thing? We are actively working on it, so I'll just give you an example. What we want to avoid is what happened in San Francisco, where they were not paying attention to the jobs and housing balance. And so they built out so much office space without housing that at some point they couldn't catch up. So we are intentionally looking at, as we update our land use codes, how we actually are very intentional about looking at creating more housing. So the other area we didn't talk about is that we just launched our Wilburton update. So Wilburton, the REI and the Home Depot, you guys familiar with that area? So we're actually looking at that space and talking about what would it look like to have a walkable urban neighborhood where we have a lot more housing in that space, and how do we write the code in a way that helps support more affordable housing, all different types of housing. Because I would say we're actually short of overall housing as well as affordable housing. I know there's some realtors in the room, and you can probably attest to the fact that right now, we don't have enough housing at all price levels, right? Bellevue School District actively looking at what can they do as a district for workforce housing for their own teachers. I don't think they've gotten very far down that path, but hearing that they are actually underway and there's some seed funding to work on that also gives me hope.
We'll take a question and some back there, and then we'll take one from online. This
Is the city looking at increasing housing through like ADUs or DADUs? Are they looking at options like that, or kind of optimizing some of these so that you can actually get more units per lot? Or do they want to?
Can you fix the alphabet out of the alphabet soup for us?
Sorry.
ADU stands for accessory dwelling unit, so that might be like having a mother-in-law apartment in your basement. I sort of have one of those, which has been very helpful for my stepfather who lives with me. And a DADU stands for detached accessory dwelling unit. So that's sort of like turning your garage or detached garage or a shed in your backyard. So so that's what that is. I don't know if either of you want to take it or.
Happy to take that. So I think Councilmember Zahn talked about the next right work. So currently what we're doing is we're evaluating different opportunities to increase affordable housing we're having discussions with various stakeholder groups within the community. We're going to be presenting the feedback that we get, and I believe ADUs and detached ADUs are one of those pieces that we'll be looking at as part of that effort.
As you all give answers as far as what we're going to do, there are ways that people should be plugging in. Provide an email address, or you let them know how they can be engaged or how to be part of this focus group.
Yeah, so I think, and that's another, I think, important opportunity that the comprehensive plan presents us, right? So, all of these things that you are bringing up, whether we, how we re-envision Wilburton and imagine that, whether or not ADUs or backyard cottages are the right solution, all of that's like what we need to discuss, right? And I think one of the questions that we have as a planning team is really, what's the right kind of housing in the right place, right? So going out here to the playfield and building a 20-story apartment building, probably not the right kind of housing in the right kind of place. But there might be housing in different parts of Newport that might be the right kind of housing in the right kind of place, right? And so that's sort of the conversation that we need to have, sort of what's the right kind of housing, what's the right place for that housing, what are the kinds of housing we need for different people. We've heard from people who want to get a starter home. What about people who want to downsize as they retire, right? Are there housing options for people at different stages of their life? And so, that's what's kind of nice about this update is it kind of allows us to kind of really step back and say, all right, we've got to think about how do we lay the groundwork for all the development that's going to happen in the next 20 years? What do we want to encourage? What do we want to foster in this community?
I'll just add one thing, and that is, I believe at the end of last year, early this year, the council did say that within the next right work, we want to look at ADU and DADU. And one change we've already made is that for a number of years, when you build a new house, you are not allowed to build in having a mother-in-law apartment. We did make that surgical change. It doesn't make sense to tell somebody with the community, why do we do that? Are there some characteristics that are important to you, setbacks, those types of things?
Brooke didn't tell you, she's gonna give us her home phone number, cell number.
I did leave some business cards in the back. Probably not enough, but Heidi has some business cards, so you can always, I used to say that when I started out, that my job was to go meet people for coffee. And now that, some of the pandemic is loosening up, I get to go meet people for coffee.
I'm gonna read one question from online, and then you'll be our next question. Thank you so much. Alrighty, so this is an online one. Near the corner, I'm reading verbatim, near the corner of Cold Creek Parkway and Victoria Boulevard, recently a large number of trees for a new development of townhomes. It's very close to Cold space, and it's disturbing. It seems to be disturbing such a large number of trees that were removed. Were there enough environmental reviews done done by the city before giving permission. If it was done following the rule, isn't our approval process too loose?
Do you want to take that? I mean, yeah, so we'll try this, which is improving, actual projects, but hard.
Sure, I can try, and as Brooke said, this is the project review process of reviewing private, the person that provided that question. Happy to get them in touch with. But our process is anytime an application comes in, the project has to meet our requirements for, tree retention on site, the number of trees that can be taken out, location of things like critical areas, so proximity to steep slopes and wetlands. And I don't know the specifics of how many trees were taken out and what the code required, but that's something we can connect with that person on for sure.
Actually, I will add this because I learned it on Saturday, from